The prominent heroes in the Philippines. Who are the prominent heroes in the Philippines? These are Dr. Jose Rizal, Andres Bonifacio, Emilio Aguinaldo, Apolinario Mabini, Marcelo H. Del Pilar, Sultan Dipatuan Kudarat, Juan Luna, Melchor Aquino, and lastly Gabriela Silang. Dr. Jose Protasio Rizal, in his full name Jose Protasio Rizal Mercado y Alonso Realanda, was a Filipino physician, poet, and writer who inspired the Philippine nationalist movement. He was born on June 19, 1861 in Calamba, Philippines, and died on December 30, 1896 in Manila. Rizal was born to a wealthy landowner and received his education in Manila at the University of Madrid. He was a skilled medical student who dedicated himself in reforming Spanish authority in the Philippines. Though he never called for independence between 1882 and 1892, he lived in Europe and wrote the majority of his works. No Limitangere or The Social Cancer in English, Rizal's first novel, was released in 1887 and was exposed of the evils of Spanish authority in the Philippines. His status as the foremost speaker of the Philippines reform movement was cemented by a sequel of Il Filibusterismo in 1891, or The Reign of Greed. He rose to become the leader of the propaganda movement, publishing numerous pieces to its Barcelona-based journal, La Solidaridad. Rizal's aims included the integration of the Philippines as a province of Spain, representation in the Cortes, the Spanish Parliament, the replacement of Spanish friars with Filipino priests, freedom of assembly and expression, and equality of Filipinos and Spaniards before the law. In 1892, Rizal returned to the Philippines. He created the Liga Filipina, a peaceful reform movement in Manila, and was banished to Dapitan in northwest Mindanao. For the next 4 years, he lived in exile. The Katipunan, a secret Filipino nationalist organization, rose against Spain in 1896. Although he had no ties to that organization and had played no role in the uprising, the soldiers apprehended Rizal and tried him for sedition. He was found guilty and publicly executed in Manila by firing squad. Jose Rizal's death persuaded Filipinos that independence from Spain was the only option. While in prison in Fort Santiago on the eve of his execution, Rizal wrote the poem Ultimo Adios, or The Last Farewell, a classic of 19th century Spanish verse. Andres Bonifacio, the great plebeian and the father of the Katipunan. He founded the secret society Katipunan on July 7, 1892 to fight Spain. He was also president of the Tagalog Republic from August 24, 1896 to May 10, 1897. Born in Tondo, Manila on November 30, 1863. He grew up in the slums and never knew the benefits of a prosperous life. He married Gregoria de Jesus in 1892 and he was killed on May 10, 1897 near Mount Buntis, Maragondon, Cavite. Andres Bonifacio between 1863 to 1897 was the creator and the head of the nationalist Katipunan organization who led the revolution against the Spanish in August 1896. Bonifacio had minimal formal education and worked as a messenger and warehouse keeper before becoming involved in revolutionary activity. Nonetheless, he was a voracious reader, unlike Jose Rizal, who fought for reforming Spanish authority in the Philippines. Bonifacio advocated for total independence. He formed the Katipunan in Manila in 1892 based on the Masonic Orders organization and ceremony. Bonifacio led the long-planned insurgency in Luzon in August 1896, but his men were beaten by Spanish troops, forcing him to flee to Montalban in the north, where Emilio Aguinaldo, one of his lieutenants, continued the fight. As the Spanish crushed the insurrection, it became evident that Bonifacio was an incompetent military leader. A conference at Tejeros in March 1897 named Aguinaldo, not Bonifacio, as the president of a new Philippine Republic. Bonifacio attempted to form his own rebel government after refusing to accept the decision. Andres Bonifacio's death came about when he was caught and tried for treason by Aguinaldo in April 1897, then executed by a firing squad. Emilio Aguinaldo between 1869 to 1964 was a Filipino leader and politician who battled for the Philippine independence, first from Spain and then from the United States. Aguinaldo's parents were Chinese and Tagalog. He was the local head of Katipunan, a revolutionary movement that battled the Spanish ferociously, and was a mayor of Cavite Viejo, now Kawit, in August 1896. In December 1897, he and the Spanish Governor General signed the Biak na Bato Pact. Aguinaldo promised to leave the Philippines and live in exile for the rest of his life in exchange for a large cash payoff from Spain and the promise of liberal reforms. While in exile, however, he arranged to return to Spanish to assist the Americans in their war with Spain. On May 19, 1898, Aguinaldo returned to the Philippines and declared a fresh rebellion against Spain. On June 12, 1898, the Filipinos declared independence from Spain and established a provisional republic with Aguinaldo as president. In September, a revolutionary movement assembled and recognized Filipino independence. However, Spain gave the Philippines, along with Puerto Rico and Guam, to the United States. Tensions between Americans and Filipinos quickly escalated. The Malolos Constitution, which declared the Philippines a republic and was accepted by both legislature and Aguinaldo, was proclaimed on January 23, 1899. Aguinaldo was elected president after serving as president of the interim government. The expected conflict between Americans and Filipinos erupted on February 4 in Manila. The Filipinos, who had battled valiantly, had been defeated all the fronts by the morning of February 5. What remained of the insurgency was finally put down after 3 years of costly fighting when Aguinaldo was caught in his hidden headquarters at Palanan in northern Luzon on March 23, 1901. In an open operation headed by General Frederick Funston, Aguinaldo signed an oath of loyalty to the United States, received a government pension, and retired to private life. Post-independence, President Elpidio Quirino named Aguinaldo to the Council of State. Emilio Aguinaldo's contributions in his final years included the promotion of the Philippine nationalism and democracy, and the development of relations between the Philippines and the United States. Apolinario Mabini, a sublime paralytic and brains of the revolution. Apolinario Mabini was a Filipino thinker and speaker of the Philippine Revolution who prepared the constitution for the short-lived republic of 1898 to 1899. Mabini was born into a peasant family and attended San Juan de Letran College in Manila before graduating from the University of Santo Tomas with a law degree in 1894. He joined the armies of Patriot General Emilio Aguinaldo in an insurgency planned by nationalists in August 1896 and quickly became his right-hand man. When the Spanish-American War broke out in the 1898, Mabini advocated for cooperation with the U.S. as means of gaining independence from Spain. When the U.S. proclaimed its intention to occupy the Philippines, Mabini joined Aguinaldo in a renewed fight for independence. He was kidnapped by U.S. troops in December 1899 and deported to Guam after refusing to swear allegiance to the U.S. He was only allowed to return home for a few months before his death. Marcelo H. del Pilar was born on August 30, 1850 and died on July 4, 1896, commonly known as Marcelo H. del Pilar and also known by his pen name Plaridel, was a Filipino writer, lawyer, journalist, and Freemason. Del Pilar, along with Jose Rizal and Graciano Lopez Taina, became known as the leaders of the reform movement in Spain. Writer, lawyer, and journalist, Marcelo H. del Pilar was born to a lawyer's family. Marcelo was the mayor of Cupang, Bulacan during the Spanish administration. After finishing law, he petitioned the Spaniards to create school for Filipinos throughout the country, certain that universal education would benefit his compatriots. Believing him to be an enemy of the state, the Spanish banished him from the Philippines. He traveled to Barcelona where he met La Solidaridad founder Graciano Lopez Taina. Marcelo succeeded Taina as editor, wrote about his people's suffering, and continued his reform work. When publication of the paper ceased due to lack of funds, he began to lose hope in peaceful reform and instead advocated revolution. He intended to return to the Philippines but died of tuberculosis before he could make the journey. Sultan Tipatuan Kudarat was the 7th Sultan of Maguindanao from 1619 to 1671. During his reign, he successfully fought off Spanish invasions and halted the spread of Catholicism on the island of Mindanao. Much like the other Muslim rulers in the southern Philippines, he was a direct descendant of Sharif Kabungsuan, a Malay Arab noble from Johor who brought Islam to Mindanao between the 13th and 14th centuries. The Soxargen province of Sultan Kudarat is named after him, as the municipality of Sultan Kudarat, Maguindanao, where his descendants who bear the rank of Datu are current political leaders. Sultan Kudarat, also known as Muhammad Kudarat, was well known in Mindanao for his bravery and leadership between 1619 and 1671. The Muslim Filipinos of Mindanao were not yet under Spanish rule. Sultan Kudarat was responsible for maintaining unity in Mindanao as Filipino Muslims struggles against the invaders. Sultan Kudarat's leadership inspired his people to fight the Spaniards, eventually beating them back. Kudarat died of old age in 1671, never surrendering to the Spanish authorities. The Filipino government named parts of Mindanao after him in recognition of his contributions, including the province of Sultan Kudarat. Juan Luna de San Pedro y Novicio Anqueta was born October 23, 1857 and died on December 7, 1899. Was a Filipino painter, sculptor, and a political activist of the Philippine Revolution during the late 19th century. He became one of the first recognized Philippine artists. He's winning the gold medal in the 1884 Madrid Exposition of Fine Arts, along with the silver win of Filipino painter Felix Resurrection Hidalgo, prompted a celebration which was a major highlight in the memoirs of members of the propaganda movement, with the fellow ilustrados toasting to the two painters good health and to the brotherhood between the Spain and the Philippines. Luna was known for painting literary and historical settings in the style of European academies of the period, some of which was included political commentary. His allegorical compositions often contain theatrical poses inspired by the scenes from the classics. Famous Juan Luna paintings include Espolarium, The Parisian Life, and Tampuhan. Melchor Aquino de Ramos was born on January 6, 1812 and died on February 19, 1919. Was a Filipina revolutionary who became known as Tandang Sora because of her age during the Philippine Revolution. Melchor Aquino, popularly known as Tandang Sora, was known as the Mother of the Revolution. Her nickname comes from the Tagalog word for old, as she was 84 years old when the revolution started. She risked her life to tend to Andres Bonifacio and other Kataponeros in 1896, providing them with food and nursing the wounded. Her bravery became evident after she was captured by Spanish officials, who subjected her to torture and interrogations in the hopes of extracting information about the Katipunan hideout. She refused to submit and was exiled to Guam on the orders of Governor General Ramon Blanco. Gabriela Silang, in her full name Maria Josefa Gabriela Carreño de Silang, was born on March 19, 1731 and died on September 30, 1763, was a Filipina military leader, best known for her rule as the female leader of the Ilocano independence movement from Spain. She took over from her second husband, Diego Silang, after his assassination in 1763, leading her people for 4 months before she was captured and executed from the colonial government of the Captaincy General of the Philippines. Gabriela Silang was a fierce Ilocano warrior. After her husband killing in 1763, took over as commander of rebel troops. She recruited military forces including native ethnics to continue the war against Spain in Ilocos, launching guerrilla raids against Spanish garrisons. In her final engagement at the liberation of Vigan, she commanded nearly 2,000 troops against an army of over 6,000 Spanish soldiers. Silang lost the battle, so she and her surviving 80 troops retreated to uncharted territory in Abra, where they were eventually caught before publicly hanging the general herself in September 1763. The Spanish forced her to witness the public killings of her soldiers. Despite her defeat, Gabriela Silang is remembered for the incredible bravery in fighting for the freedom of Ilocos.